Hi, my name is Luca. I'm a 3D artist with 3 years of experience. This is the breakdown of my Rampage Rally submission. Here you can see some of the pieces I used in DaVinci's Fusion. I mainly added blood and I did some color grading in the color tab. Now, when I saw the challenge, I searched for a dragon model I made 1 year ago. Once I found it, I fixed the rig and then began making a blockout for the animation. Later on, I added a knight model I made and rigged a couple months back. Once I finished the first blockout of the animation, I made a first blockout of the environment. I used some rocks I sculpted a month ago and fixed the procedural material. Fixing it was quite a pain and I had to remake it a couple of times. The process I used for the first blockout is pretty simple. First of all, I began with some really big rocks to make the primary details. Then, I added the smaller rocks as secondary details, and tertiary details are obtained with the procedural material. As you can see, I used the snapping of the 3D cursor and then instanced the rocks all over the scene, one by one. Then I checked from the camera view and, after a lot of work, I was done. After the environment, it was time to fix the dragon. I began with adding eyes, gun, nails and all the other things it was missing. Then I went back to the main body and started sculpting. I used the multi-res modifier to have some flexibility with the amount of geometry. Then the sculpting process was long. I first refined the shapes and then began adding details. For the shapes, I used the clay strip brush and the smoothing brush. For the details, I used some alpha textures and some VDM brushes from flipped normals. Thanks to this, I was able to have a lot of details without having to sculpt every single scale with the normal brushes. After the main body, I also sculpted the horns and the gun, mainly with the clay strip brush. And I also added some details to every secondary mesh. After sculpting, I had to texture the dragon. For this, I used the Uku Paint add-on. It is a great way to have layers and also procedural masking in the texturing process. I used the cavity to have red at the edges of the scales. Then I added various layers to have more variation. I painted the base color variation in a layer and mixed it with the cavity layer. Then I added a few noise layers to add even more value variation. Thanks to this, I was able to have quite a natural result. After the main body, I repeated the same process for the secondary meshes like nails and horns. Then I baked the albedo map and the roughness map. At that point, I had the dragon ready to go. I imported it into the file and was ready to finish the animation. Before rendering, I continued working on the animation and on the environment. After adding all the necessary poses, I switched to splining and in a couple of days, the dragon animation was polished. For the environment, I added some vegetation with grassfold, orgy scatter, and then I also modeled these 2 towers. I reused the design I made for a cathedral model last year. I used the Boolean modifier on a subdivided icosphere to divide the main meshes in submeshes. Then I moved them around and rotated them. For the materials, I used a simple setup similar to the rocks, with the super noise of Gleb Alexandrov and this HSV noise that I suggest trying out. I also added a waterfall. There are 2 main parts. One is the water and the other one that is even more important is the smoke. The water is just a plane with low roughness, but the smoke is a more complicated setup. In the shader editor, I made some 3-dimensional masking with gradients and used the noise texture to make it look like smoke. Then, I used the driver to animate it moving along one of the axes. Regarding the lights, there is a sunlight with a low angle, 2 area lights for the rim light. I created fake clouds with a section of a sphere and a procedural material. Then there are 4 cues with volumetrics for the fog and the atmosphere, and around 10 planes with fake light rays. The material of the light rays is made with a basic noise texture and some basic masking. Like the waterfall, it is animated with a driver. Now I'll leave you to the last part of the post-processing. Thank you so much for watching.